And now, everyone, please put your hands together and give a warm welcome to your host, Patrice Scanlon.
Awesome. Hello and welcome to everyone in the audience today, and thank you for those who are joining us online. My name is Patrice Scanlon. I'm a course director for the Recording Arts program. I am so honored to be on this panel today. It's called Getting Your Start in the Music Industry. Kind of an important one, yeah? Maybe? All right. So some of the top dogs in our industry are here with me today to have a discussion about this. First up, Leslie Brathwaite. Y'all know him. Ashish Manchanda. Hall of Fame 10 inductee, Josh Gudwin. And last but certainly not least, Sebastian Krys. Awesome. So you guys are at the top of your game right now, but let's rewind back to when you actually graduated. And what did that first year out of school look like for you? So Leslie, you want to start with that one?
Hey everyone, happy Hall of Fame. First, just your initial fears are pretty much common across the board. A lot of people kind of feel the same things, You're thinking about your next move. You're thinking about where you're going to live. You're thinking about practical things. You're thinking about money. You're thinking about all these ramen noodles that you're going to eat. Trying to figure out life, in the back of your mind. For me, personally, I wasn't so nervous about will I be successful or will I was just in go mode. I was just in this mode of just doing. Trusting the education I got here, trusting the foundation I got here, and just taking the steps and knowing that I had to put in the work. And I think that's the thing, is just being aware of the fact that it's going to take work and then be willing to do the work, because there's two phases to it. You can be aware that it's going to take work, but then you actually have to do the work. So that was my mindset.
Awesome. Thanks. How about you, Ashish?
So for me, it was coming to a new country. For the first time, I'd never traveled outside India before, so it was a time to adjust to a new culture. But America is great for opportunities, and it's a land where you can do whatever you want to do and fast track it. Sometimes better than in other countries. So for me, it was a lot had to do with confidence building. That whatever I'm going to do, how confident am I? So I remember a good part of my time over here was about building my confidence to take up any challenge that comes my way. So Full Sail helped a lot in creating awareness, creating friendships, how to make great macaroni and cheese. So I wanted to get out of that really soon. But I think for me it was a lot of confidence building that I found that I had to work on.
Awesome. How about you, Josh?
The first year?
Yeah, first year out.
Sleeping on couches, saving money, living below my means. Basically, like how Leslie was talking about the mindset, like I wasn't worried about anything in my mind. I was already going to the direction I was going, and I wasn't thinking about not doing it. So I was never thinking about not doing it, and I just wanted to make sure that I could enable my lifestyle to make the sacrifices in order to not, sink financially. A lot of guys, or girls, sorry, ladies, a lot of people get pushed out financially because they need money and they just quit.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah. What about you, Sebastian?
Well, for me, it was 2 weeks before graduation, my dad had a heart attack, so that threw everything for a loop. Life happens. So that made me change all my plans. Initially, I wanted to go to LA or New York, and I went back to Miami to be with the family and try to keep his business afloat. What really helped me was really my mom said something to me which I carry to this day, which was, don't ever feel like when you're working you're sacrificing anything. If you feel like it's not a sacrifice, then you're going to do all right. And to Leslie's point, I just I worked, man. I worked like 90, 100 hours a week. I worked for free. I just worked. And I wasn't looking sideways or backwards or why is something happening or not happening for me. I was just head down, grinding.
Awesome. That's so important, I think, for everybody in the audience to hear. You know, you're not, I think a lot of people feel like, oh, I put in my 2 years at Full Sail, where's my job? You know, so there's more to it than that, than
It's
just
at
getting
McDonald's.
the degree, you know. What's that? Yeah,
Said it's at
exactly.
McDonald's.
Yeah, it's not an exchange. Like, you don't pay money for a degree and then we give you a job. You know, there's so much more in between what you take from this school and then how you apply that when you get out there. Now, most of us graduated in the 90s, right? Except for Josh. You were 2006, right?
2006.
So industry is a lot different today than it was in the 90s. So if you guys were starting out today, how different do you think that first year and your start in the career would be? You want to start with that, Leslie?
Interesting. There's so much, not just different about the industry, but different about the world. And it would be interesting to navigate the industry now. I think all the core principles apply, though. And I think why it's still relevant that a lot of us graduated for me, I graduated in 92, Sebastian right before me. Ashish, what year were you?
97.
97. A lot of us, no matter what time frame we come from and what era we come from, there's a lot of things that change, like technology change, the way we record, the things we learn. For instance, I used to have an assistant back in the day. I have really no use for an assistant now because everything is touch of the button, super quick. But what you find is there are things that transcend time and era and technology. Hard work is hard work. I don't care how much technology you have, you still have to, there's all the things we talk about on all these panels daily that transcend even different disciplines. It's not just audio, it's film, it's gaming, it's everything where, you know, hard work, be a likable person, all the soft skills that we always talk about, all that stuff is still relevant no matter what changes, no matter how times change. You still got to work hard. You still got to put in the work. And I said it on a couple of panels yesterday where no matter how many of these you attend, all of these are good. School is good. It's all foundational. But you can't cheat time. You still have to put in the time. You still have to evolve. You have to give yourself time to get better. And you got to be willing to work. I don't care what era it is. So those things don't change.
Awesome. How about you, Ashish?
So I'm somewhat old school. I think it's very important to present yourself really well. And every day I'm more inspired by the Nike tagline, which says, just do it. So I think thinking too much is a waste of time and it's a disease. So if you set out to do something, you should just go ahead and do it. If there's somebody you can identify who's your hero or somebody who you kind of decide should be your mentor, then it's now your job to make your scheme to get around with them. That's your job at school. It's a given that you're working hard. It's a given that you're doing really well at school. But this is what you have to do because there's no education like working with somebody like a master. You have to be, I mean, it's a fast track into the industry. A doctor starts off working out as a resident with another doctor because they see how they work with patients and they learn from like interacting with patients, how the skill sets are put to use. We are no different. So if you can make your strategy right now and find out who your role model is, then now it's your job to get a job with them. How you get it, irrelevant. Like I said, I'm old school. If I really want to get that job, I'll stand outside their house. Okay, I'll get inside their house, you know, and but I will get that job. If it matters to me, I decide. They don't decide. They have to give it to me. So I've seen that over a period of time, unless you have a crazy determination to and your hunger for success and to be around lovely people, you stand a chance to be lovely. If you hang around with duds, you will become a dud. If you hang around with superstars, you'll become a superstar. So it's very inductive and magnetic. So you can write emails, you can shoot out messages on social media. You might get some traction. Some people do respond, and in good time. But I won't wait for a response from somebody. If I want to get the gig, I'll just go and get it. So, like I said, I'm old school,
Awesome. And what about you, Josh?
Can you repeat the question?
So how would your story be different if you were starting out today in 2019?
I don't think the story would be any different, to be honest with you. Like, I look at, everyone at this table, they've been in the industry 15, 20 years longer than I have. And everything still applies. Like, that doesn't mean just because technology is different, like how you get your job is different, how you solidify your job is different. It's all hard work. It's all being with the right group of people that want to be around you. And I don't know. I don't think anything's different. Same thing.
Sebastian, what about you?
I've given this a lot of thought in practical terms. I agree with absolutely everything everybody said. The difference, I think, for me is that when Leslie and I started out in Ashish, it's like, okay, you go to a studio, you get an internship, you become an assistant, you become an engineer, and yada, yada, you die. So, it was a very clear line.
Right.
I think that now if I was going in, number one, I would go after producers, songwriters, anybody who has a studio, which is pretty much everybody. And I would cobble together an existence. I don't think that nowadays one person's going to be the person. Eventually it will be one person, but to get to that one person, you got to work with a lot of people. And I always tell students this because it's how I hire people. I hire people on the basis of what I don't want to do. Find out what people don't like to do and get really good at that, and then you become indispensable. I don't like installing plugins. I hate dealing with my computer, so it's like, come deal with my computer while I go do something fun. And that's how you get your foot in the door, by doing crappy jobs that nobody wants to do. I mean, we did it. I did plenty of, I cleaned up dog crap from my engineer when I would go walk him and he'd already pooped in the house.
Right.
Yeah, if someone from my studio comes in my door and asks to walk my dog, I'm going to say yes.
There you go.
And I'm going to look at that person every day, like, yo, come in, walk my dog. And that's how you get in my studio.
Right.
And I also wanted to highlight something that Ashish said that's very valuable, that still applies, which is if you have the opportunity to work under someone or to be around someone or work with someone, you're not just learning the actual craft. You're also learning how to have conversations with people, how to deal with people, how you get paid, all these side things that you can observe in a room when you work with somebody. Same thing with, like you said, a doctor. They work with another doctor. They're not just learning the skills and the actual practice of the medicine. They're learning how to come in and talk to patients, how to give them bad news, how to give them good news, how to assess their mood and da-da-da. All that stuff is what makes them great doctors and what makes people want them to do the work. So it's all about that kind of stuff, too. That was a huge point to underline as far as just what you're learning. It's not, a lot of times students tend to think they only want, you guys are geared to only learning what you want to learn and what you think you need to learn to get where you want to get. But there's so much other techniques and soft skills and all this stuff that helps you get to where you want to be.
I see the biggest challenge when working with fresh people, including ourselves, when we got into the industry. You can teach people how to turn knobs and buttons and start listening, but to work with or to chisel somebody's attitude and character, that is a lifelong journey. And it's like, why does somebody have to deal with that? So if you can work on yourself as a self-improvement or development plan, it'll serve you for your life. So it's something that should have been done in your childhood, so that your peers and your teachers and your people where you work don't have to deal with that. But getting your attitude and character sorted out in good time will serve you forever. Your sincerity and honesty towards whatever you do, and as a person, it will come through. People will see that, and a good eye will pick up a good eye. So you don't have to worry. If you're really good, you will eventually get picked. Of course, you have to be smart to position yourself and align yourself so that you're on people's radar. If you're not on the radar, of course, you're going to be, it's out of sight, out of mind. But work on your character, work on your attitude. And this is self-development. No school is going to teach you that. Life will teach you that. So why don't you prepone that before getting into a situation where you're going to be told to do those kind of things. So if you can look at yourself in the mirror and practice that, I think it'll fast track you.
That's great. So when we're working with artists, it's really important for us as the engineer to portray a certain level of confidence, because a lot of times, even the big top artists, everybody has a little insecurity or nervousness when they walk into the studio.
A little?
Right, I was going to say.
I was being generous, you guys. So I think that's also a really important part of our job. So maybe you guys could touch on that a little bit, how your confidence helps lead that session and lead to get the best out of that artist that day.
Yeah, we set the tone. I mean, we're the person in the room that knows what all the buttons do. And we are, whether we like it or not or know it or not, we set the tone. And if you come in and if you have a great attitude, 9 times out of 10, you can kind of set the tone in the mood, the tone and mood in the room. And so if you have a crappy attitude and if something breaks and you get flustered and the artist feels that energy, it translates from human to human. And so there are plenty of times I'll be in a room with Cardi or with Rihanna or whoever, and something like the computer will have blown up, and they wouldn't even know. I just kind of figure out a way to say, hey, let's take a break. I got to back up something real quick. And I don't have to back up anything. I got to, fix the whole damn thing. So, it's just how you handle it. And again, knowing it, Sebastian and I probably know this, this was a key thing, especially back in the 90s where, knowing when to talk, knowing when not to talk, knowing when to give input, when, there's certain, you learn everybody's language, you learn their moods, and you learn how to, just like Sebastian said, one of the most valuable things, even us now as an engineer, figure out what's the void in the room, and then fill that void. So it still applies even to us who are professionals, who are Grammy winners, whatever. My job when Cardi is in the room is, let me fill the void. If she wants excitement, I got to try to help get that mood there. If she wants quiet and I can see she's clearly in a bad mood, or if she just had an argument with her husband, I'm just chilling and I'm just waiting and doing, making sure her coffee is right or whatever the case may be. So yes, we do set the tone.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I look at it like if you're an engineer, you're like a pilot. Mm-hmm. So the pilot knows the cockpit really well, but the passengers do not, and they'll trust you blindly. Yeah, you'll take them wherever you're supposed to go to the destination, and give them a good ride. And the pilot will not go and have a drink with the passengers, or the pilot will not go and do some things that will get the passengers, somewhat antsy about hey, look what the pilot is doing. So when they come into your room, you're the pilot, and that's your cockpit. So I think you have to, and like Leslie said, you have to navigate the session very sensibly and read and learn to read people, then what their needs are. And of course, you have to deliver what you have to. But people are vulnerable. They look at you like you're a bouncing board for life, for suggestions, different things. So it's very important to show that you're in charge, because somebody has to be in charge of a session. So if you are the engineer and and that's your space, then you are the pilot. Then you have to do everything that a pilot would do as in an aeroplane. I kind of look at it like that, and that's helped me.
And I was going to say really quickly, even knowing things like, just the simplest thing, like if you're in the room with the artist and the music is playing and then their phone ring and you see them go to answer their phone, you turn the music down. You follow the cues that make sense. And I've seen other engineers be in a room and the artist is taking the call and then the engineer just keeps listening and then the artist is like, yeah, what? They're yelling, and I'm like, just turn the music down. You got to follow the cues and know how to make them comfortable. For me, a lot of artists, one of the strong points is they don't like to have to tell you everything. They don't want to communicate every single thing. And the more you develop this synergy where
Right.
I kind of know what you need and I kind of know you're reaching for your phone, let me turn the music down a little bit. Sometimes they don't want you to turn it down too much because they don't want everybody else to hear their conversation. So you got to kind of gauge all that kind of stuff. And that comes with interacting with that person more and more. So it's that kind of thing too.
What, you guys?
You want to go?
No, I think they pretty much said everything. I mean, I think the one thing you guys should just remember is, you know, a lot of people say, man, you're so calm. You know, it's like the studio could be on fire. It's like that. What they don't know is that inside, I'm a mess.
Yeah.
Like, so that's okay.
Yeah.
You know, it's okay to be like nervous and to be, you know, you just got to try to be as prepared as possible and read the room, you know, but it's okay to be nervous. Like I'm nervous every time I do a session, every time I step into the studio, still to this day, it's, you know,
Yeah.
I get nervous and I prepare and I over prepare and I want to make sure that things go right and smoothly, mainly because I want to, you know, not get home at 3 o'clock in the morning. But, you know, everybody's got their reasons. That's mine.
Yeah.
But yeah, just it's all right, you know, to feel that way. Just don't make everybody else feel that.
All right, so we've got a couple of different ways to get in the industry now, right? There's the beat makers, the producers, obviously as an artist, and engineer.
You can also buy your way in sometimes.
Oh, can you? Show me how to do
Give
that.
Leslie some good bucks, he'll get you in. Even Sebastian and George for that matter.
So with those different paths, like just to kind of piggyback on what Sebastian was saying earlier, there was such a clear line in the 90s, like go be an intern, make your way up. Now there's like 8 different ways to get into this industry. So maybe you guys can talk a little bit about that. Like people who specifically want to be producers, be beat makers, what advice would you give them?
Josh?
So
Yeah, Josh.
I think there's a lot of different lanes to take. Like, in my opinion, if you want to be a songwriter, I don't know if you'd want to intern at a studio and
Right.
run at a studio and assistant engineer at a studio. Like, I would surround myself with songwriters and music publishers, you know, because the publisher is going to put your songs in places. You know, if you want to be a producer, there is an advantage to working in a studio because you could play your beats for people. But at the same time, you're running 12 hours a day getting stuff for other people, and that takes 12 hours a day away from you making beats or producing your own music. So the whole like interning at a studio approach does not apply to everyone in this room. It might apply to a couple people in this room.
Right.
So I tell new students all the time that like you got to figure out what route that is you want to take, and there is the right avenue and right approach for those different routes. Like the route is not all to intern at a studio and get your way up in the studio.
Cool. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, I think to add to that is just get your foot in the door. Like don't be precious about what it is exactly you think you want to do. You know, like right now everybody's like, you know, I want to work with, you know, whatever artist or in whatever genre of music. I ended up in Latin music by total circumstance, you know, and I'm glad things worked out the way they did for me. But one of the things was I was just open to what was happening and where I got my opportunities. And it's like, I wasn't like, I'm not going to work with these people because I don't like that music or I don't understand that music. I was like, I'm going to work with these people because they're really good at what they do, and I can learn, to Ashish's point, I could learn from people that are masters. And then that opened up this whole world to me that I did not know existed. You know, I was into punk. I mean, that's what I liked. I wanted to be in, you know, making punk records. And I ended up making punk records. They were just in Spanish.
So what advice would you give them for that first step, getting their foot in the door?
Stock.
Oh.
What's that?
Stock.
Stalk people? No, come on, guys.
Yo, I got my first job at a restaurant because I waited for the owner to finish his lunch, do his meetings. I sat at a booth for like 2 hours waiting for this guy to come say hi to me.
Stalking.
And then he asked me why I'm sitting here. I was like, I'm trying to get a job. He's like, well, you're hired. Like,
Wow.
she said, stock, like, wait outside the door. Like, that stuff goes a long way. Just don't be weird about it.
Yeah. There's a cool way to
Oh my God,
start.
I love
Yeah, there's a good way to do anything.
There's a good way to stalk.
I
Okay.
thought, I actually was like, I'm going to get an answer from these people. Like, they're either going to say yes, they're going to say no, or they're going
There
to
you
take
go.
out a restraining order. Like, that was, but I'm not going to take, I don't know, not now. Not now to me means like, yes. You know, like, not now is not an answer that I accepted. Just don't accept, you know, somebody shutting the door.
Right.
You know, because it's all about timing. Like, I may not, right now, I may not need anybody in my company. Tomorrow, somebody may leave to another company or get fired. So it's, that's why you gotta, by stalking, I mean, you gotta follow up. Don't just send a resume, you know, reach out one time and then never reach out again.
Right.
That will get you absolutely nowhere.
And I think a valuable tool or skill as well is just offer something of yourself. So whenever you're in any space or area, add value to that space. So like my first internship, first day in, I've told the story many times here on campus. First day in, I walked into the studio and I heard the studio manager say he needed a storage space cleaned out. And I was there for an interview with my resume in hand. And I was like, I'll do it. And he didn't know me. I was just there for an interview. And he was like, who are you? And I was like, I'm your next interview, but I'll go clean out the storage space. Right away, I'm offering something to them. And so that's a cool way to get your foot in the door, too. Instead of always feeling like something needs to be done for you, what can you do for that person? How can you add value? Piggybacking off of what Sebastian said, figure out what they don't want to do, and you do it. Nobody wanted to clean out their storage space. And when I got to the storage space, I realized why. Nobody wanted to do it, but I did. So
We're in a service industry. Like, we're servicing artists, we're servicing music. You guys need to service us to make our job easier, too.
yep.
You guys, you know, it's all about service.
And it's a lot about attitude. So it's no job is small or big or large, or you know, if
Exactly.
it's your attitude that is small or large, you know, or compromised. So the two stories I can share with you, which I mean, stemming off from what Sebastian and Leslie just said. One is that you make some place for yourself. So I remember it started out at Full Sail, and so I come from this little city in India called Pune. And it's like a cultural and an educational capital. But there's nothing for audio and music, and there was just a film school, one of the only film schools in India. And so when I came here, suddenly, I mean, I thought I was special back home. You know, this guy, sound, movies, live entertainment. I loved the entertainment business. And I thought I was very unique. And then I come to Full Sail and I see that everybody's here has come to do the same thing. You know, and these guys, some of them are like 12 months ahead of me. Some have just started with me. Some have passed out, and look at, you know, what all they've accomplished. So where do I find and where do I make a space for myself? And I love live sound too. So at the live sound venue, that time, it was called Puff and Stuff or something on another street. And the venue was plagued with problems, lighting problems, electricity problems. There was always hum on the shows. It was a mess. And I was like, what a playground to learn. You know? So there were a lot of my friends who would crib about it. I was like, this is greenfield opportunity. So I had a technical background in engineering. So I was like, everybody cries for, you know, like there's hum, there's noise. And it's because of my technical background, some of the instructors, I picked on their brains. You know, I just sat with them 24/7. I wouldn't leave them, and I wanted to understand, how do you get rid of hum? How do you get rid of noise? If you're in a perfect facility, it's all sorted. You know, you don't learn these things then. And that place, it was plagued with problems. So cutting a long story short, I started figuring out how do you get rid of this hum thing from guitars, from systems, how the lighting, and also the dimmers at a particular point will interfere with your sound system, and then it will not. What the video lines can do, how do you run lines from each other? There was lots to learn, and I was like, this is great. You know, every live gig is not in a perfect venue, in a club or in a venue which is... So I made the place called Cable Heaven. And we made some adapter cables from one to the other that you could connect anything to anything. It's like, just to simplify, it's like USB to HDMI to USB 3 to any other format.
Nice.
Okay, and it'll all work. Okay, and same with audio. How do you take unbalanced to balanced cables? Now, this is all the stuff you can learn over here. So the instructors helped me prepare myself, cable heaven, and I made a yellow sticker so that everybody knew that it was cable heaven, and they knew that if they needed to get rid of that, they had to come to me because nobody else knew how to do that. So suddenly, from being my first job over here at Full Sail Live was I had to clean the floor, I had to wrap the cables, I had to clean the loo, and I learned how to put in the toilet paper the correct way.
The loo is the restroom, by the way.
And so I became a master at that, and I loved it. So because whatever I take up, I love to do it really well. And that got noticed by my superiors, and it didn't take long for me to become the crew chief really fast. So I was a nobody. I became a somebody by making some place for myself. And when I got my first gig in New York, I cleaned up the loo in such a beautiful way.
The restroom.
They wouldn't let me go forever. Okay? So many stories apart, but you have to make a place for yourself, make yourself indispensable if you can. I think your attitude will come through with everything. Making great coffee, answering the phone well, servicing your clients well, and doing your job well. So it's not like I only mix well and then everything else is bad. I think it affects your whole life. So if you can work on your attitude.
And listen to the terminology he used, like something that other people would have looked at as a problem. It was a playground.
I was like, opportunity.
It was a playground. It was opportunity. That attitude alone, that's amazing.
Cool. So I had a few students give me some questions, so I thought I would kind of touch on these too. Especially when you guys are first starting out, you're probably not going to be working with the most experienced artists. So sometimes they have a really difficult way of communicating to you what it is they actually want. Mm-hmm. And that can be very discouraging because they're like, well, just make it sound like you want it to make it sound like, and just don't really give you any direction. So have you guys experienced that? Mm-hmm. And what are some tips to kind of get the artist to be a little bit more communicative of what it is they actually want?
Ooh, pick me.
Okay, Leslie.
I experienced that now with some of the best of them.
Right.
So I don't think it's a problem just specifically with newer artists or earlier in our careers. It's a constant thing. And what I always say on that topic is that's one of my first steps in mixing a record is I develop a language with the artist, and I figure out what they mean, what they want to communicate, how they communicate. And for me, I don't try to make it a priority to try to teach them everything. If they're willing to learn, that's a different story. But really, it's about figuring out how I can make their life easier. And I'll give you a perfect example. The very first time I met Cardi B, one of the first terms she used to describe something in a mix was, it's making her dizzy. She didn't know that the thing that was making her dizzy, the technical term was, it was just panning, it was an auto pan. But she didn't know that term. She just knew that something was going like this and it was making her dizzy. And it was my job to figure out what that meant, translate that, and make sure I take action, and without the friction, without the, oh, nah, you meant to mean, you should have said so-and-so. I knew what she meant. As soon as I sat down and heard the mix, I was like, oh, she means the auto pan. And so you develop this language and you figure out how to talk to them and how you figure out how that works. And so it's not a problem just specifically with new artists. It's just everybody has a different way of perceiving sound, perceiving things, and it's a constant. I wouldn't even call it a challenge. It's just a constant thing. It's a factor in what we do, and I think it's important to learn how to communicate with different people.
Right, so it's not just all about the technical skills. You
Yeah.
guys really need to start the best practices now of, yes, all the technical delivery aspects and recording techniques and mixing techniques, but so much of this is about vibe and how mindful you are of your attitude and other people's vibe in the room. And at the end of the day, we're just trying to create a good vibe so people will buy that music.
Yeah, and the cool thing is, if you a lot of times I see with engineers, this was in the '90s a lot, but I still see it now, where engineers can tend to have a condescending tone about technical things because they know the technical
Yep.
thing. So I wasn't condescending with her at all. I knew exactly what she meant, and then she asked, "So what do you call that?" And I was like, "Panning." So it's like if you're just cool about something, my goal wasn't to make her feel like she was less than just because she didn't know the term auto pan. She just didn't know the term, but she knew how to communicate how it made her feel, and that's the important thing. And as long as I understood what she was saying and what it was making her feel, I then wanted to enter the mode of empathy and figure out, let me see if I can feel dizzy too when I hear it. What is she talking about? It was a mix that somebody else had did, a song that she was on, and she was frustrated because she didn't know how to communicate to the other engineer. And, she was like, "Oh, I get it." She was like, "It's making me dizzy." And the minute I heard the mix, I was like, "Oh, I get it. I know what she's talking about." But I didn't make her feel bad about the fact that she didn't know what the term was.
I think that it's really important when you work with anybody. To Josh's point, it's a service industry, so it's not about
Yep.
a lot of the arguments with artists are when there's two people in the room and one of them forgot that they're not the artist. So part of the reason why we get gigs is we understand we're there to serve the music and we're there to serve the artist. We're not there to serve ourselves.
Yep.
And that's something that you can still have both. You can still be passionate about what you do and proud of your work and not be an egomaniac that has to have it your way.
All right.
Amen.
And you got to understand and trust and respect the people you're working with. If you don't respect the artist, if you don't respect the producer, you might as well not work with that person.
Great. So we are going to turn over the questions to you guys. So there'll be people on either aisle here with microphones, and I think they're going to point you out. So we'll just sit here beautiful until our first question is asked. Here we go.
Throw them hands up.
Hi, my name is Raya Stevenson. I'm in the music business degree program here. Do you have any tips for the business aspect of the industry?
Great. Who wants to take that one?
Definitely. Handle it. You got to figure out what kind of person you are. If you're a creative person and you don't want to deal with business, I would say it still behooves you to learn to pay attention in your music business class or entertainment business class, and then decide if you're somebody that wants to deal with that. And if you do, like myself, I handle all my business. I've never had a manager in the 28-something years I've been doing this. And that's just because that's my personality. I like to handle my stuff. I like to have a quick conversation. This is how much I'm getting paid. This is when I'm getting my money. This is when you get in your mix. And it's very easy for me to have those conversations. For some people, it's a difficult thing. Some people don't like talking about business.
I hate it.
And and then you got to hire someone.
Can't do it.
Yeah, so you have somebody else do it at that point. And then, just be aware of what you're signing, what you're, signing up for. I've talked famously on this campus about, I went through a period where I started making a lot of money. I was young and I didn't know I had to pay taxes. And the IRS surely let me know that was the case. And, and I talk about it freely because I don't want y'all to go through it, And so I was able to recover and do all right. But, you got to have some sense of business, or you have to know, like Josh said, he hates it. And so I'm sure you handle it differently.
I would work for years and not ever get paid for anything. I'd be like, why? What happened? It's like, I just don't like sending invoices in. I don't like talking about money. I like just to service the music so I could just focus on that. It gives me anxiety to have to give someone a price to do something, because I will do it for free at the end of the day if I want to.
Right. And Sebastian, did you
Yeah,
add to that?
I have a record label and a management company, and we do A&R work. And one of the things I found when hiring people is I don't give a lot of direction. So the people that have stayed with the company are people that show initiative. You know, they show smart initiative. They don't just take it upon themselves to change everything. But they do take it upon themselves to give ideas, install processes that'll make their life easier and will make the workflow better. And, you know, it's funny. It's about 50-50 for people who are like that and people who show no initiative. And the people who show initiative have jobs.
So there's something I can add to that. So if you're on the business side of music or entertainment, it would be smart for you to also understand what the process is like and to understand. So that it's not to be a specialist recording engineer, producer, songwriter, or a performing artist, but to be included and to make yourself present in maybe sessions. It's like every large corporation, whether it's like the Ford, Rockefellers, Carnegies, they make their kids start from the bottom, not because they don't love them, because they want them to be aware of the full process, what it takes to run this entire unit and this company. So you'll have empathy for your employees, peers, people who will be probably working with you or your colleagues in time, but to understand that there are so many slices and that no one is less or more than somebody else. And I think the music business suffered from that in the 80s and some to the 90s, where the management and the business side became so authoritative to say that they make and break everything. Okay, so, and that started messing up with the creative process, and that changed a lot of things. Okay, it also helped some of the industry tank because they were not sensitive enough. So if you're going to be on the business side, it's important. Like a producer for a movie also needs to understand what the director, editor, and like I said, not to be a specialist, but it's very important to know what the process is and how important it is and how to understand timelines and the challenges that they have. You might set a deadline and maybe the team cannot keep up with it. It's unrealistic because you don't understand the process. You'll make a poor business decision. So if you want to be a good leader and a good business leader, you need to understand the process of what you're going to be responsible for, and then of course hire a great team to be specialists.
That's awesome advice. Thank you guys so much. All right, we got one other question over here.
Yeah. Hello. I have a question.
Speak up.
Oh, hello. I have a question. I don't know. In studio, when should I know? I should talk. When should I?
That's
when
a good
should
question.
I
Yeah.
shut up like that?
If you're questioning it, don't talk.
Yeah. Pretty much.
That's what I would say.
We have a question for our social media page from Frank Foley. He goes, what advice would you have for an international music producer trying to get into the industry within the United States?
That's a great question.
I
Okay.
think you should come to the United States.
Maybe Ashish, you'd be a good person to answer that one.
Yeah, so if you want to make it over here and you want to fast track your career, you better come here. If you want to make it in your country, stay in your country. But
I wasn't trying to be funny.
but, I mean, you got to make yourself present and available and accessible, so people can call you for a job or gig. Once you're successful and you're very well known and you're super well known, then you can operate out of anywhere. It's like even when you dress up. Initially, you cannot come dressed in slippers and look like a haggard. Okay, once you become like a superstar, you can do anything you want, maybe. But initially, you need to present yourself really well. You should be well attired, well presentable, and be in the place where the action is happening. So you identify where that action is happening, and then go to where the action is happening, because otherwise you miss the point.
The only thing that I would say is I do think that there's a sea change going on as far as what music is now, the music of the world, where the United States and England have ruled popular music now for decades, that's no longer true.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
BTS just sold out 2 Rose Bowls. Like Beyonce doesn't sell out 2 Rose Bowls.
Right.
You know, you have the whole Latin movement that's going on. You have an incredible movement of music coming from Africa. I think that the great thing about the moment that music is living right now is that truly the world is becoming connected through music again, and not just through one culture of music, which used to be solely, really, I mean, the epicenter of everything we've lived through for the past, since 1950s was Memphis. It all happened in Memphis, and that influenced decades of music. Mm-hmm. And now that's just no longer true. So, yeah, come to the United States, but you don't necessarily have to come here anymore in order to have an international hit or be somebody that's in the game. The way that I believe that when we were coming up, that was absolutely true.
I agree, and to your point, I agree. And just to clarify, when I was saying come to the United States, to only if you want to be successful in the United States at that point. But no, I totally agree with what Sebastian is saying. What we do in this country is we tend to think of the word international in a certain context, and we forget that a whole other planet exists out there. And so we tend to look at things weird in this country, and until you've traveled a lot and seen the rest of the world and understand that there's a lot of different contexts to that word international. So, but I totally agree with Sebastian. We do not, it's a different era of what drives just world music, popular music, definitely.
Awesome. One more question?
Hi, my name is Talvin Payne. I just recently graduated February. So, starting my music production company, a lot of the panelists that I come across and in my experience here at school, most advice that we get is from engineers and not so many producers. So the wealth of experience you guys have, and that I always hear from you guys, is great. From the perspective of engineers and all the experience you guys have, thinking about production and me starting a music production company, what are some of the components I need to build, like in my team? Because now I have a crystal clear vision. I see it's going to take a lot, and I'm only one person. So, like attorneys, marketing people, what's the most important things I need to get in place right now?
First of all, surround yourself with people that are more talented than you are. Always do that as a producer. As a producer, that was the thing. The teams I built were filled with people that were far more talented than me. People who, I have assistants who are now, there's a former assistant of mine who I now co-manage, who's the guy that did Despacito. So he was already better than me, when I hired him straight out of school. So that's the key. As far as getting your stuff out there, the very first thing I would do is just make sure the stuff's good, mm-hmm. and then hire a PR firm. Mm-hmm. Before you hire attorneys make life difficult. They don't solve problems, they create them. But you'll need some eventually. But in the beginning, make sure what you're doing is really great, and then hire PR.
And even to the core of what Sebastian is saying, and to the core of the spirit of what he's saying, you even have to back up just a bit and recognize the humility in what Sebastian said. He hired people that were better than him. You have to first shed your ego, and that's what I see a lot with young people sometimes is the ego. They're not willing to accept the criticism of, you just may not be as good as you think you are. There are people that are better at something than you. And so that requires a huge amount of humility and a certain posturing of the mind and brain to be able to execute. So I commend him for that, and I think that's the right mentality and the right mind frame to have, is understanding to be able to say you got to hire people that's better than you. You got to have a certain level of humility, and there has to be a lot of ego that's shed.
I mean, setting up your own enterprise, you are like a movie director. And a critical job of the director is to cast really well in every department. Technical, legal, sometimes. I mean, the producers will come in. But if you're running the show, then you're like the director. So you need a great cast with you. Just echoing what both of them have just said. So you have to have the ability and trust, to know how and work with people who can help you cast really well and do their jobs really well. So you don't need to be teaching everybody what to do. Otherwise, what are you going to do? So you need to do what you do well, and then you cast your members who do what they do well.
Okay, we have time for one more question.
Hi there. My name is Michael Belden, music production. And I'd asked this to Leslie earlier, and you actually just recently touched on it, but I'm up here now. So what is something that is kind of a pet peeve for you? And how shedding the ego is really important, but are there any other things maybe when you first get started working with other people that just really ruin either the vibe, like as you mentioned, or just the creative process in general?
Bad attitude, body odor, nose whistles. Some people got a nose whistle. If I'm trying to mix and I hear a nose whistle, I'm like, oh man.
What about mouth breathers?
Clear your nose. Heavy exhalers.
And we always laugh at that stuff, and you guys know me. Those of you who've been in my lectures and my seminars, take a shower. Body odor. We're in rooms with you. When you're networking with people, if you come up to somebody and your body odor is off the chain and your breath is off the chain, they're not thinking about what you're saying. Put yourself in their position. Have you guys been in a position where you're talking to somebody and their breath is terrible and you're not thinking about what they're saying? So you got to understand that stuff, it's funny, but that stuff affects how people view you. If we want to work with you, that could be the deal breaker. It's been a deal breaker for me a couple times with people. And I'm sure that kid was talented, but man, I couldn't deal with it. The
Put away your
was so
phones.
distracting.
Yeah.
What was that?
Put away your phones.
Amen.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, the phones.
If you're in a session and you're on your phone, you're not in the session.
Right.
Yeah. And scrolling through Instagram, and then the video comes up and the volume is up, and I'm trying to mix, and I'm like, what the hell? Yeah.
All
Bring
right.
your dogs to the session except for you.
No dogs in the session, you said?
For the artists, no.
Oh,
Unless
okay.
they want to eat some skewered chihuahua later on.
Some artists are allergic to dogs. You got to navigate that, that terrain too. Luckily, all my artists love my dogs, and they ask for my dog to come.
So your dog is part of the vibe.
Yeah. But I do work for myself.
Yeah, exactly.
I can kind of do that.
Just saying, as an assistant.
Yeah, help me. It's just,
All right. Well, that's all we have time for today. Please put your hands together for awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much, Sebastian and Josh and Ashish and Leslie, for being here. It was an absolute honor. And make sure to go to some other events, check the app, and you guys can hit these guys up, ask them some questions. Thanks, guys.
you guys are the future of our industry.
Yes.
So don't ever think you guys are less than that.
Amen.
Yeah.